The Trebizond Empire was founded in 1204 by the brothers Alexios and David Komnenos with the help of their paternal aunt Mepe Tamar the Great of Georgia in the aftermath of the Fourth Crusade. Much like the Desperate of Epirus and the Empire of Nicaea, the other two Roman Rome states, the Trebizond also attempted to reconquer Constantinople from the Latins and restore the Eastern Roman Empire. While it initially David experiences success at expanding Trebizond's territory along the Black Sea coast, all the way to the borders of the Empire of Nicaea, it was ultimately defeated in 1214 by the combined might of the Seljuk Sultanate of Rome and the Empire of Nicaea, eventually having to become a subject of the Seljuks and giving up most of its territory along with its claim to Constantinople. Later, when the Mongols invaded Anatolia, much like the Seljuks, Trebizond also became a vassal of the Mongols. During its time as a Mongol vassal, especially due to the destruction of Baghdad, the city of Trebizond became the new terminus of the Silk Road. Thus, the city became a very important and wealthy trading center that served as a gateway for goods from the Mongol realm to travel to Europe and vice versa. In the game, this is reflected in the fact that the base tax in Trebizond is similar to the Kingdom of Georgia, Trebizond's far larger neighbor to the east, as well as the Republic of Venice, which at the time had a similar population as Trebizond, but was considered one of the wealthiest countries in Europe. Trebizond saw a golden age during the reign of Alexis II Megas Komnenos, who became the leader of Trebizond in 1296 at the age of 14. He funded the sciences, particularly astronomy, and turned Trebizond into an education hub that attracted scholars from far away. He wrangled in the influence of Italian merchant republic traders that conducted trade within Trebizond. He also fended off various Turkoman raids. However, the golden age of Trebizond came to an end in 1330 when Alexis died of the bubonic plague, and after his death, his eldest son, Andronicus III Megas Komnenos, became the new ruler. The first thing Andronicus Komnenos did was to kill all of his male siblings, but vassal Komnenos managed to escape to Constantinople and even married Irene Palaiologos, the eldest and illegitimate daughter of Andronicus III Palaiologos, who was incidentally the ruler of the Eastern Roman Empire in 1337. Andronicus Komnenos was supposedly a tyrant, and in 1332 he also died from the bubonic plague, just like his father. He was succeeded by his son, Manuel II Megas Komnenos. However, due to the actions of Andronicus, the Trebizondian nobles deposed Manuel and invited Vassal back from Constantinople to rule over Trebizond. After returning to Trebizond, Vassal ordered the execution of his nephew, the deposed Shah ruler Manuel II, which was an unprecedented act in Trebizondine history. Not only that, Vassal even married and had kids with a second wife, despite the fact that it went contrary to the teachings of the Orthodox Church regarding marriage. Thus, in the game, Vassal is given the sinner trait. Later on in 1340, Vassal was assassinated by his Byzantine prince's wife, and Trebizond was plunged into a decades-long violent civil war, from which Trebizond never fully recovered. Thus, Trebizond shifted its geopolitical focus to maintaining superb diplomacy as a way to defend itself. This emphasis on diplomacy came in quite handy during the confrontation between Amir Timur of the Timurid Empire and Sultan Bayezid the Thunderbolt of the Ottomans. As the two giants were gearing up for a clash, Trebizond sided with Timur, and as such was spared the devastation brought on by Timur in the aftermath of the Battle of Ankara, and subsequently, Trebizondine Empire lifespan was extended. Eventually, just like the Eastern Roman Empire, in 1461 Trebizond was also conquered by Mehmed II, thus truly ending any remaining claimant to the once mighty Roman Empire. In 1337, Trebizond is in a precarious situation, but due to its relatively strong economy, Trebizond still has a chance to avoid its historical fate. So the goal of this campaign is to destroy the Ottomans as early as possible, then eventually conquer all of the territories ever held by the Eastern Roman Empire. Lastly, if time allows, restore the Roman Empire.
At the start of his reign, Vassal realized that Trebizond is far too weak to stand up on its own. So it started establishing diplomatic traditions to ensure better relations with its neighbors. Not only that, it realized that the Principality of Theodoro could be a useful subject in the future, so it started improving relations with them. Not only that, it wanted to ensure good relations with the regional hegemon, the Mamluk Sultanate, to ensure that any future expansion will not result in coalitions with the Mamluk Sultanate in it. As such, Vassal started improving relations with the Mamluks as well. Not only that, Vassal realized that the Dynastic are far too powerful and their power needs to be reined in, so Vassal started consolidating powers of the realm within the crown by enforcing autocracy. And then he also realized that it is necessary to keep all of his estates happy to ensure he can collect taxes without upsetting his estates too much. So he made the diocese of the realm more powerful to ensure the clergy are more happy. He gave out building rights privilege to the burghers to ensure buildings are cheaper, and not only that, he gave out he ensured commercial advisory council so that there could be more trade, and he ensured that there is a land of commerce within Trebizond so that the buildings are more efficient. Not only that, he gave out the tribes within the realm some tribal land rights to ensure improved prosperity of the realm. And then he realized that after giving out so much privilege, his legitimacy has decreased, and not only that, his stability is quite low. So he appointed cabinet members to work on the legitimacy and the stability of the realm. And he also realized his control over the realm is quite low, so he appointed a cabinet member to start improving control over his realm. And then he realized that he needs to choose rivals so that it is possible to pick better allies. And such, the first thing he did was rival the Beylik of Eretnitz, the Beylik of the Horde of Jalayarids, the Beylik of the Ottomans, as well as the Hulagurid Horde. Vassal also realized Trebizond's economy could be further improved if he starts building buildings that are necessary to meet the needs of his population, as well as libraries to ensure that the population is more literate and that the Pontic culture can have more influence. So as such, he started building libraries, tailors' guilds, masonries, and marketplaces to ensure his goal of making a more prosperous Trebizond. On April 23, 1337, the neighboring kingdom of Georgia sent a request alliance. So Vassal realized that this could be a great opportunity, decided to graciously accept their alliance request.
As Vassal was waiting for his government reforms as well as laws on the regulations of precious metals to get implemented, he noticed that the Eastern Roman Empire had chosen Irene Palaiologos, in other words, Vassal's wife, as the new heir to Eastern Rome. Not only that, he had noticed that the Ottomans were waging a war against the Republic of Ahis as well as their ally, the Kharijids. Seeing this as a great opportunity to weaken the Ottomans as well as gain some favors with the Republic of Ahis, which happened to be the dominant country of the Turkish culture, Vassal decided to intervene in the war on the side of Ahis. So he mustered up all of his levies, both naval and land, to invade the Ottoman territory. With the first goal being would be to land either on the Kharizid territory or on Heraclea Pontica, which was owned by the Eastern Roman Empire. Then from then on, marching on to the Ottoman capital to help the Kharijids siege down the Ottoman territories. On December 11, 1338, Andronicus III Palaiologos, the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, passed away, leaving the throne to Basilissa Irene Palaiologos, the wife of Vassal Komnenos, and as such it formed a marriage union between the Eastern Roman Empire and Trebizond. After raising the levies, Vassal appointed a competent nobleman to lead the navy and opted for leading the Trebizondine army himself. And then on December 30th, 1338, the army and the navy arrived in the Kharizid location of Bandırma, and then Vassal decided to head towards the Ottoman capital of Bursa to aid the Kharizid army in sieging down that capital. And not only that, he sent the admiral to blockade the Ottoman coasts to ensure that the siege can go more smoothly. On January 7, 1339, the Trebizondine army finally managed to arrive in the Ottoman capital of Bursa.
However, as soon as the Trebizondine army arrived, the Karasid army decided to leave the siege and let Trebizond become the siege leader. On February 24, 1339, Vasileus and his army finally managed to siege down the Ottoman capital of Bursa and waited in the location so that the army of the Republic of Ahis as well as the army of the Karasids could join up with the Trebizondine army. That way they can head down for a final battle against the main Ottoman army to relieve the siege in Ankara. By April 12, 1339, Vasileus and his army alongside the Karasid army not only managed to arrive within the Chubuk locations in the Republic of Ahis, but also finished resting and recovering their morale. And with their morale full, they decided to head towards the fort of Ankara to relieve the siege that was being carried out by the main Ottoman army. The fort in Ankara had a plateau topography as well as farmland terrain. And since it was owned by the Republic of Ahis, Trebizond and Karasid army managed to fight defensively while the Ottomans were the attackers in the Battle of Ankara. The Trebizondine Karasid army had far superior numbers and had similar quality as the Ottomans. The Battle of Ankara was a great success. The Trebizondine Karasid army lost about 1,000 men, while the Ottomans lost almost 2,500 men. After winning against the Ottomans in the Battle of Ankara, Vasileus split apart his army to siege down all of the provincial capitals of the Ottomans, so that the war could be ended quicker. By June 26, 1339, Vasileus was ready to peace out from the war between the Ottomans and the Republic of Ahis. During the peace treaty, Basileus annexed the provinces of Sultanonu, Bolu, Safranbolu, and Sirvahisar from the Ottomans, as well as obtaining some ducats. A few months after the victory against the Ottomans, it was time to begin the very first Parliament session. Vassal assembled together members of the nobility, the clergy, and the burghers within his realm in the capital of the empire to discuss the issues favored by each of the estates. The issue of hosting the army exercises enjoyed one of the highest support. As such, Vassal chose that as the topic of debate for the Parliament session. The debate had over 50% support, so Vassal used this opportunity to change the laws on the distribution of power to favor the ruler in order to concentrate more power into the hands of the crown. Not only that, Vassal had greater ambitions for this parliament. He wanted to change the laws on the role of the patriarchate to combine the patriarchy so that there's better cooperation between the church and the states. Vassal also wished to reduce the censorship so that the country could be more innovative and exert more cultural influence, as well as have better tolerance of heretical and heathen beliefs. However, uh, due to the passing of the laws on distribution of power, his support in the parliament reduced to less than 50%. As such, he needed to cooperate with the states, specifically appealing to the parliament agendas brought forward by each of the states to ensure that he has enough support to realize his ambitions.
While working together with the states in order to gain enough parliament support to realize his ambitions regarding legal reforms for this parliament session, Vassal noticed that one of the agendas put forward by the burghers was to change the mining laws from noble-controlled mining operations to burgher-controlled mining operations, so that the power over mining operations in the realm could be transferred over from the nobles and onto the burghers. Similarly, another agenda being put forward was to change the administrative system laws from feudal administration to central council, and it was being sponsored by the clergy. In both cases, Vassal eagerly agreed to implementing those agendas. This is because these agendas not only increased parliament support, but also these specific law changes were part of Vassal's plan for future parliament sessions. Thus, Vassal was able to gain enough support to enact the combined patriarchy law for the role of patriarchy laws, as was the no censorship for the censorship laws. Unfortunately, these legal reforms once again reduced support in the parliament to below what was necessary for the main issue of the debate, that being hosting army exercises. Then, while waiting for the debate to finish, people from various provinces in the realm came out to show support for the parliament debate. Thus, Vassal ended up gaining enough support to not only realize his ambitions regarding legal reforms for this parliament sessions, but also pass the debate. Also, as Vassal managed to start enacting all of the legal changes that he wanted to, another thing Vassal did was release all of the lands that he conquered from the Ottomans as subjects. Namely, he released the province of Bolu and the province of Sultanonu as vassals, and he released the province of Sirvahisar as well as the province of Safranbolu as fiefdoms. Then he later force converted the subject ruling over Sirvahisar to orthodoxy to ensure that the subjects can convert the province to orthodoxy. On December 7, 1340, Vassal received the tragic news that his eldest son and heir, Crown Prince Alexis Komnenos III, has fallen ill. He had the choice between sending for a trained medic, who was unlikely to be able to make sure that Alexis stays alive, versus praying for his life, which was also unlikely to make sure that the prince stays alive. Vassal chose to pray for him to live. Unfortunately, Crown Prince Alexis died anyways, and as such, Vassal's youngest son, Crown Prince Andronicus Komnenos, who was at that time located in Constantinople due to him being the heir to the Eastern Roman throne, became the new heir of Vassal, and thus Crown Prince Andronicus Komnenos was set to inherit not only the Eastern Roman Empire, but also the Empire of Trebizond. As the night has come to an end for the age of tradition and gave way to the dawn of the age of Renaissance, Vassal had to think quite a lot about what aspect of statecraft he should focus on going forward in this age to ensure the continued survival and prosperity of Trebizond. Should he focus on the military to strengthen the imperial army and navy? Or should he focus on diplomacy to secure defensive allies that could help defend Trebizond, as well as improve the reputation of Trebizond abroad through great diplomats? Or should he focus on the administration of the realm to ensure a more efficient and prosperous Trebizond? Trebizond did not have enough wealth, sailors, nor manpower to support a standing army or a grand fleet.
thus military focus was out of the question. Trebizond already had secured some defensive allies in the form of its alliance with the Kingdom of Georgia to the east and its marriage union with the Eastern Roman Empire to the west. Thus, there was no need for securing any allies for the sake of defending Trebizond in the near future. Not only that, Trebizond already had established great reputation abroad, so that it was not necessary to focus on improving reputation either, thus diminishing the need to focus on diplomacy. This meant the only thing left to focus on was the administration of realm. As such, that is what Vassal decided the focus of Trebizond should be going forward in the age of Renaissance. Around March of 1342, the Eastern Roman Empire erupted into a civil war, where the nobles of the realm attempted to overthrow Vasilisa Irene Palaiologos, and as such she asked for aid from her ally Serbia as well as Trebizond. Considering Vasil was the husband of Vasilisa Irene Palaiologos, Vasil eagerly agreed to her call to arms, and thus joined the war against the Eastern Roman rebels. By September of 1343, Vasil built up a small corps of professional infantry as well as some cogs to help transport the troops and put down the rebellion within the Eastern Roman Empire and turned Trebizond into a great power. And as he was about to disband his levies, he noticed that the Republic of Ahis was being attacked by the Chunderids and their allies, and as such Vasil decided to intervene on behalf of the Republic of Ahis. And soon after, he sent his whole army to relieve the siege in Ankara. During the Battle of Ankara, not only was Vasil's troop of better quality and quantity with a better general, but he was also the defender since the Republic of Ahis owned the fortress of Ankara. The battle resulted in a quick and decisive victory for Trebizond, with minimal losses for Trebizond and significantly greater losses for the Germanids and the Chunderids. With the fortress of Ankara secure, Vasil decided to take his army to Trebizond to regroup with his vassal's army and defeat the remaining army of the Chunderids and Germanids. Before Vasil and his subjects were done regrouping within the location of Trebizond, the enemy army quickly sieged down the capital location of the county of Sultanonu and fled. And as such, Vasil and his army had to chase them down. Eventually, Vasil managed to catch them in a defensive battle within the location of Temonion, where Vasil had the advantage since it was a mountainous, forested province with a river, and Vasil had better quality and quantity. After Temonion, Vasil chased down the enemy army to Diospolis, where he wiped out the remainder of the Germanid army. And then at the Battle of Vasilika, Vasil wiped out the remainder of the Chunderid army as well. Finally, in the Battle of Smyrna, Vassal and his army wiped out the remainder army of the Idanids. Thus, the enemy had no more army left. By July 1344, not only did Vassal manage to fully occupy the provinces of the Idanids, Germanids, and Chandrids, but he had also annexed the Germanid Sirvahisar as well as the entirety of the Chandrids. He handed down the Chandrid Safranbolu over to his subject, the county of Safranbolu, and the Germanid Sirvahisar to his subject, the county of Sirvahisar. And he divided the remaining provinces of the Chandrids into 4 new subjects. In December of 1344, Vassal held his second parliament session within his capital. The goal of this parliament session was to conduct a census of the realm so that he could have a better idea about his subjects. Vassal noticed that the institutions of banking and Renaissance have already been embraced by Venice. To make sure that Trebizond does not fall behind, Vassal wanted to use the parliament session to obtain claims that could allow him to subjugate the Republic of Venice and ensure that Trebizond stays ahead in terms of its technological development. By working together with the states to pass their desired agendas, as well as receiving random show of support from the population of Trebizond, Vassal managed to reform the laws regarding heir religions such that the heir could be of any religion, but also he managed to obtain claims on Venice and pass the debate. And as such, it increased the stability of the realm. Vassal had better idea about his subjects, and he was ready to declare war upon Venice, which was quite weakened due to their previous wars against their enemies. And as such, Vassal expected that it should be an easy victory against Venice. On June 1st, 1345, together with the aid of the Eastern Roman Empire, Vassal decided to declare war on the Republic of Venice and their ally, the Prince Bishopric of Aquileia, using the Parliament-approved claims, casus belli. September of 1346, the Trebizondine army finished their siege of Venice, and soon after, vassals signed a peace treaty with the Republic of Venice, where Venice became a subject of Trebizond. Thus, the Empire of Trebizond managed to establish a foothold in Italy and secured a way to spread the institutions of Renaissance and banking to Trebizond, such that Trebizond could remain ahead in tech compared to its neighbors. On October 1st, 1346, news were circulating about a deadly plague that was last seen during the reign of Justinian the Great. According to the news, the disease started to spread from a faraway Central Asian location named Dondeboy. So vassals started taking precautions to minimize the potential deaths from the disease before the disease could arrive in Trebizond and wreak havoc like it did during the time of Justinian. On April 5, 1348, the Black Death finally arrived within Trebizond. However, since hearing of its spread in Central Asia, Vassal prepared to deal with it by building up hospitals so that his subjects can have better resistance against the disease. However, the Black Death was not the only thing that arrived within Trebizond. Soon after, an epidemic of smallpox had also occurred within Trebizond, which started devastating the capital, and as such, Vassal prepared for it by segregating the infected to ensure minimal transmission of diseases. On December 1st, 1349, as the bubonic plague was ravaging the land, it was time for another parliament session, so Vassal once again gathered the notables of the realm in the capital for the parliament session. The goal of the session was to use the support of the parliament to change the laws on education of the masses to pursue more devout education. This legal reform hoped to help the masses get closer to God such that he may spare those who are still alive from the horrors of the plague, as well as help those who have passed away into the afterlife. The issue of increasing ties to neighbor enjoyed one of the highest levels of initial support, and incidentally it was supported by the nobility. Therefore, it was chosen as the topic of debate. Initially, it enjoyed enough support to pass on its own, and as such, the support was used to change the law on education of the masses to devout education, thus accomplishing the first objective of the parliament session. However, this resulted in reduced parliament support for actually passing the debate, and as such it was necessary to work together with the estates to pass their desired parliament agenda. By October of 1351, the initial wave of the bubonic plague finally ended, and during the time it spread, it killed about 90,000 people within Trebizond alone, which constituted about 25% of the initial population of Trebizond. On September 27, 1353, after killing about 86 million people around the world and about 87,000 within Trebizond alone, the bubonic plague finally came to an end. After the bubonic plague was over and the Trebizondine population and army had recovered, Vassal wanted to expand his territory further, specifically into the territory held by the Tacitan Beylik. However, Tacitan Beylik was a subject of the Aretinids, which in turn was a subject of the Jalayirids, which means in order to fight the Tacitan Beylik, it is first necessary to free them from the Aretinids, and to do that, it is necessary to fight the Jalayirids, as well as all of its subjects, in order to eventually conquer land from the Tacitan Beylik. So, to do this, first Vassal created claims on the Aretinid Beylik with the help of the parliament. However, the Jalayirids had lots of subjects, which in turn would have made the battles against the Jalayirids very difficult. So it was necessary to wait for a proper opportunity in order to ensure there could be an easy victory against the Jalayirids. This opportunity came in 1355, when the Jalayirids were going through a civil war and all of its subjects were disloyal, which means attempts to fight the Jalayirids will result in their vassals not engaging in the war, and thus victory could be won much more easily. So that is exactly what Vassal did in late 1355. After declaring the war, the Trebizondian army quickly sieged down the location of Sungurlu and established a defensive position so that the army of the Trebizondian subjects can attach with the Trebizondian professional army, as well as bait the Eretnid army into attacking Trebizondian army while it's in a defensive position. And on the other side, the Trebizondian Levy army starts sieging down the other provinces of the Eretnids. The Battle of Sungurlu was a decisive victory where the Trebizondian army defeated twice the amount of Eretnid soldiers than it had lost. While on its way to head to Sivas, the Trebizondian army encountered a smaller Eretnid army and decisively defeated them in the Battle of Sulusare. After sieging down the undefended provinces of the Eretnids, the Trebizondian professional army as well as the attached subject army went to reinforce the siege at Sivas that was being carried out by one of the Trebizondian levy armies. However, during the reinforcements, some of the subjects of the Jalayirids as well as the Eretnid army went on to break the siege, and thus resulting in the Battle of Sivas. The Battle of Sivas was a decisive victory for Trebizond. However, as soon as the first Battle of Sivas was over, the second Battle of Sivas started, in which the Trebizondian and its subject army was the attacker, since Sivas was a fort owned by the Eretnids, and thus it was at a disadvantage. However, due to numerical advantage, Trebizond was on the winning side, thus resulting in a decisive victory for Trebizond. Due to maintaining high trade volume with the Constantinople and Venetian markets, as well as requesting knowledge sharing from subjects, the institutions of banking and Renaissance, as well as professional armies, managed to spread to the city of Trapezus, where over 20% of the population of the Trebizondian Empire lived. Thus, it was possible to embrace all three institutions by December of 1356. After annexing territories during the war against the Jalayirids, Vassal released the newly obtained provinces as subjects. Namely, he released Togad, Bozo, Kirsehir, and Kayseri as fiefdoms, and Erzurum and Divrigi provinces as vassals. After the war against the Jalayirids, Vassal renewed the alliance between Georgia and Trebizond. However, his expansion into the Eretnid lands during the recent war resulted in a lot of antagonism between Trebizond and the other countries within Anatolia. So much so that the Tachtanid and the Karamanid Beylik formed a coalition against Trebizond. However, one of Trebizond's subjects, namely the Beylik of Ahis, created a casus belli against the Karamanids. Seeing this as an opportunity to cheaply annex the Tachtanid lands without having to bring in its overlord, the Jalayirids, Vassal decided to use the claims made by Ahis to declare war against the coalition preemptively.
By December of 1359, Vassal had already established de jure control over the entirety of northern Anatolia through numerous subjects. Not only that, to his north in the Crimean Peninsula, he established overlordship over the Principality of Theodora, or Gothia as it was more commonly known. To his south, he liberated the Armenian kingdom of Cilicia from the Karamanid Beylik and vassalized Cilicia. To his east, Vassal had secured a strong defensive border by re-establishing his alliance with the Kingdom of Georgia. To his west, he had eliminated the Ottomans and handed over all of the western Anatolian coastal provinces he conquered over to the Eastern Roman Empire, since the crown prince, Andronikos Komnenos, was set to inherit both the Trebizondian Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. Vassal's aggressive push towards making Trebizondian society more innovative and embracing institutions early turned the empire into the most literate and technologically advanced country in the known world. Vassal's push towards improving trade and industry allowed Trebizond to have a prosperous economy that could punch well above its weight, and for the Trebizond's market to dominate the eastern and northern Anatolian provinces and almost reach the northeastern shores of the Mediterranean Sea. All of this combined allowed Trebizond to become the number 4th great power in the